So, mathematically speaking, there is this island off the coast of South America where you are never more than like 3 feet away from a venomous snake.
Yeah, and we're not talking about just any snake either. We are talking about a highly specialized predator, one whose venom can literally melt human flesh.
Right, which is just insane. It's an environment so hostile and honestly so overwhelmingly dangerous that the Navy has strictly forbidden anyone from setting foot on its rocky shores.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is essentially a restricted zone for human survival at this point.
But today, we're taking a stack of your sources ranging from biological research papers on pit vipers to historical maritime records and even pharmaceutical journals, and we're going to figure out how a piece of absolute paradise became this natural biological weapon factory.
It really is one of the most phenomenal biological mysteries on the planet, honestly.
Yeah, and more importantly, we're going to uncover a massive twist that reveals why that strict government ban isn't just in place to protect us from the snakes, it's actually there to protect the snakes from us.
Which is such a wild paradigm shift when you really dig into it, because from a distance, this place looks like an absolute postcard. Lush green canopy, rugged cliffs rising out of the crystal clear waters of the Atlantic, completely untouched by human development.
It sounds like a billionaire's private getaway.
Right, but the moment your boots hit the ground, the entire paradigm of what you think you know about predator-prey dynamics just shatters.
Which is exactly why we need you, our brave listener, to join us on this deep dive today. We are taking you on a virtual expedition into forbidden territory.
Buckle up because it gets intense.
Definitely. This is Ilha da Queimada Grande, located about 35 kilometers off the coast of São Paulo, Brazil. Around the world, it's known by a much more sinister, yet entirely literal name, Snake Island.
Snake Island, yeah, that pretty much covers it.
Okay, let's unpack this because my brain is having a very hard time reconciling the postcard image you mentioned with the reality of an island just completely overrun by vipers.
Yeah.
How does a pristine tropical island turn into a horror movie set where one single species completely dominates an entire landmass?
Well, to understand the sheer scale of the danger we are walking into on this expedition, we really have to look back at what you could call the trap of deep time.
The trap of deep time. Okay, I like that. What does that mean?
So we need to rewind the clock, roughly 11,000 years, right back to the end of the last major ice age. Because if we look at the geological records in our sources, Ilha da Queimada Grande wasn't always an island.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it was just a regular hill on the edge of the South American continent.
Hold on, so you're saying the ancestors of these snakes didn't, like, swim out to this island like some sort of reptilian invading force?
No, not at all. They slithered there over solid ground. Thousands of years ago, global sea levels were significantly lower because so much of the Earth's water was locked up in massive glaciers and ice caps.
Right, the Ice Age.
Exactly. So this 430,000 square meter patch of land was connected to the mainland of Brazil by this broad, vegetated land bridge. The snakes were just living their normal terrestrial lives, doing what pit vipers do.
Which is what exactly?
Hunting rodents, small ground mammals, amphibians in the underbrush, just normal snake things.
But then the climate shifts, right? The planet naturally warms up over millennia, the ice caps start to melt, and all that displaced water has to go somewhere. The oceans start to rise.
And as the oceans rise, that low-lying land bridge slowly vanishes beneath the waves. Over generations, the high ground becomes an island.
Wow.
And the specific population of snakes that happened to be living on that hill found themselves suddenly cut off from the continent.
It's like a giant geological escape room. Only the ice melted, the water rose, and the door locked behind these animals forever. They're stranded, entirely surrounded by the unknown Atlantic.
That is the perfect way to look at it, because this is exactly where intense evolutionary pressure kicks in. When a population of animals is suddenly isolated on a tiny landmass, it usually spells disaster.
Because they have nowhere to go.
Right. They have a limited gene pool, no new territory to expand into, and they are entirely at the mercy of their new, severely restricted environment. They simply can't leave.
Which brings up a massive logistical problem. If they are trapped on a rock that is roughly the size of, 100 football fields, what happens to their food supply?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question.
Because you mentioned they were hunting ground mammals. I have to assume a tiny island can't naturally sustain a massive, endlessly reproducing population of mice. If they were trapped with no normal prey left, how didn't they just starve to death?
Well, the grim reality is they absolutely faced mass starvation. That is the evolutionary bottleneck of this story.
Oh, wow. So a lot of them did die.
the vast majority of them perished. The ground-dwelling mammals on the island were either hunted to extinction by the trapped snakes or simply died out because the confined ecosystem couldn't support them.
The food web just collapsed.
Completely. The snake population crashed. But evolution, especially in confined spaces, is a brutal and incredibly efficient filter. It forces organisms to adapt or die.
So starvation wasn't the end of their story. Adaptation was.
Exactly.
And as we push further inland on our virtual expedition today, wading through this dense island foliage, this brings us face to face with the legendary apex predator that actually beat the escape room.
And what a predator it is. We are talking about the Jararaca iloa, which is known in English as the golden lancehead. It's a beautiful, pale gold pit viper that exists literally nowhere else on the entire planet.
Okay, but if all the ground prey is gone, what on earth are they eating?
Because the ground was barren of food, the surviving snakes had to look up. The golden lancehead survived by completely changing its hunting strategy. They became hyper-specialized hunters of migratory birds. Yeah. Isla de Queimada Grande happens to sit right on a major flight path, so it acts as a convenient, albeit deadly, resting stop for birds making exhausting journeys across the open ocean.
Wait, catching a bird is vastly different from catching a mouse. A mouse might run a few feet into a burrow, but a bird has a massive three-dimensional advantage. It can literally take to the sky.
Exactly.
A snake that evolved to bite a rat on the forest floor surely isn't equipped to take down a bird.
You've hit on the exact mechanical problem the snakes faced, and this is where the biological adaptation becomes genuinely terrifying.
Okay, color me terrified. How do they do it?
Let's walk through the mechanics of a normal snake strike. If a mainland snake bites a mouse, the venom might take a few minutes to fully shut the mouse down. The snake just follows the scent trail and finds its meal nearby.
Because the mouse can't get that far.
Right. But if a golden lancehead bites a bird resting on a branch, and that venom takes even 60 seconds to work, the bird is going to panic, take flight, fly out over the open ocean, die midair, and fall into the water.
And then the snake loses its meal, expends its venom, and starves anyway.
Exactly. So, for the golden lancehead to survive, it needed a venom that didn't just kill myself. Eventually, it needed a venom that incapacitated the prey almost instantly. The prey must drop where it stands.
Wow. Instant lights out.
Over thousands of years, the snakes with the fastest acting, most devastatingly toxic venom were the only ones who secured meals, survived the season, and passed their genes to the next generation.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. You're describing a venom that evolved under an incredibly rapid, high-stakes pressure cooker to become an absolute weapon of mass destruction for a very specific type of animal.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It's an evolutionary sniper rifle. One strike, zero chance of escape.
The venom became up to 5 times more potent than that of their closest mainland relatives. And to complement this, the snakes actually physically changed too.
Like how?
Well, they developed slightly different coloring to blend perfectly into the island canopy, and they became highly adept at climbing. They learned to anchor themselves in the branches and just wait in absolute stillness for an exhausted bird to land.
Okay, but I have a question about this sniper rifle venom. If it is so hyper-specialized for taking down small migratory birds in a matter of seconds, is the horrific effect it has on human tissue just like a terrifying biological accident? Because humans are obviously not part of this isolated ecosystem.
It is essentially a biological accident, yeah. We were never part of the golden lancehead's evolutionary environment. But the venom's underlying mechanism doesn't distinguish between a bird and a human, it just attacks specific biological structures.
So what does it actually do to us?
The venom is heavily hemotoxic and cytotoxic.
Okay, those are heavy biological terms. Walk me through what those actually mean for our brave listener if they get bitten on this expedition. What is happening under the skin?
Let's break down the mechanism. Think of your red blood cells like a highly efficient highway system delivering oxygen throughout your body.
Okay, I'm with you.
Hemotoxins don't just block the road, they chemically dissolve the pavement. The venom rapidly destroys red blood cells and fundamentally disrupts your blood's ability to clot. It causes massive, immediate internal hemorrhaging.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and at the same time, the cytotoxins go to work on the cellular level. Imagine the cells of your muscle and skin are like little water balloons. The cytotoxins act like thousands of tiny needles, puncturing those cells and causing massive tissue necrosis.
So it's literally melting the tissue.
Yes,
right.
Literally. From a biological perspective, the venom practically starts digesting the prey from the inside out before the snake has even swallowed it.
That is horrifying.
So when a human is bitten, even though we are massive compared to a bird, that hyper-concentrated chemical cocktail goes to work immediately. A bite can cause the skin and muscle tissue around the area to literally melt away.
Along with all that internal bleeding you mentioned.
Right, internal bleeding that is incredibly difficult to stop, followed by renal failure and severe cardiovascular collapse.
And remember, listener, as we navigate this expedition together, you are 35 kilometers out at sea. There are no docks on this island. The terrain is jagged and steep. If you are bitten, immediate specialized medical attention is geometrically impossible.
You're entirely on your own out there.
Which naturally brings us to the human element of our journey. Because every good expedition into the unknown needs a ghost story. And our sources show that Snake Island has a genuinely chilling one.
Oh, it really does. While the public is banned today, there was actually a brief period in the early 20th century when humans tried to carve out a foothold on the island. The Brazilian Navy built an automated lighthouse there eventually, but before the automation, they needed a human operator.
Right, and the local folklore centers squarely on the tragedy of this last human lighthouse keeper. According to the maritime records and local legends, this man lived on the isolated rock with his wife and children.
Which just seems impossible to imagine.
I know, but for a while, they managed to maintain the light and keep the jungle and the thousands of venomous snakes at bay.
But the environment was fundamentally hostile to them. According to the popular narrative passed down by locals, the sheer density of the golden lancehead population eventually overwhelmed their defenses.
How does the legend go?
Well, the legend states that in the dead of night, swarms of these vipers, perhaps seeking warmth, slithered through the windows and cracks of the lighthouse keeper's cottage. The family awoke in complete darkness, totally surrounded by the island's apex predators.
Just absolute nightmare fuel. I am physically shuddering just thinking about waking up to that. It plays into the ultimate horror movie trope, right? The monsters breach the fortress.
It really does. The story goes that the family panicked and tried to flee through the pitch-black jungle to reach their boat down at the rocky shore, getting struck one by one in the dark by unseen predators hanging from the trees.
I mean, what a profoundly chilling image. Now, obviously, we have to look at this through an analytical lens. Many specific details of this legend have never been officially confirmed by historical records, right?
Right. There are varying accounts of what actually happened to the keeper and his family, and how much of it was embellished over decades of storytelling.
Naturally.
But from an anthropological perspective, whether the story is fully factual or highly exaggerated almost doesn't matter. The story serves a very specific, vital function.
Because it's embedded in the minds of every local fisherman who operates in those waters, right?
Yeah.
Guys who make their living on that ocean are completely terrified to even drop anchor near the island, let alone step off their boats.
Exactly.
So I have to ask, do you think a terrifying ghost story about a family being consumed by vipers is actually more effective at keeping people away than the official Navy ban?
I think it does the heavy lifting, absolutely. I mean, humans are fundamentally narrative creatures. When we see a government decree that says, restricted ecological zone, it appeals to our sense of law, which some people are naturally inclined to break or ignore out of curiosity.
Oh, for sure. People love breaking rules.
Right. But a visceral story about a family dying in the dark, that bypasses logic and hits our primal survival instincts. The folklore creates a powerful psychological barrier.
It's like nature's ultimate keep-out sign.
Exactly, painted in campfire stories. And it keeps curious, unprepared people away from genuine mortal danger.
But as we reach the final, deepest stage of our expedition today, we really have to flip the script. Because there's a massive twist to everything we've discussed so far.
There is, and it completely reframes the whole situation.
We've been operating under this assumption, and the folklore reinforces it, that the government ban is strictly in place to keep humans safe from the snakes.
Which is a very, very happy byproduct of the ban, don't get me wrong.
Sure, but the real twist, the thing that changes the entire perspective of this deep dive, is that the ban is actually meant to keep the snakes safe from us.
This is such a vital paradigm shift. The Jararaca-Ilua, despite being the undisputed ruler of this island, is actually a critically endangered species.
That's so wild to think about.
They exist completely unchallenged in this one specific place, but that tiny island is their entire universe. They have no backup population anywhere else.
So they're incredibly fragile.
Immensely vulnerable to any shifts in their environment. A single wildfire, a disease introduced by humans, or habitat destruction could literally wipe the entire species off the face of the earth in a matter of months.
And the sources highlight a darker human element here too, right? biopiracy.
Unfortunately, yes.
There are actually illicit networks of wildlife smugglers who try to sneak onto the island to capture golden lanceheads for the illegal exotic pet trade, which just strikes me as a level of reckless greed I can't even fathom. You are risking melting your own flesh to sell a snake to an underground collector.
It's pure madness. And that is exactly why the Brazilian Navy strictly patrols the waters, and why the only people permitted to step foot on the island are highly authorized, heavily vetted scientific researchers. Because the golden lancehead is heavily targeted not just for pets, but for unauthorized, unregulated research.
Okay, let's explore that part. Authorized researchers are going to one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Why? What are they looking for?
Well, what's fascinating here is the sheer scientific and medical goldmine hidden within this danger. Earlier, we talked about how destructive the venom is. We discussed the mechanism, how the hemotoxins cause massive internal hemorrhaging and immediate cardiovascular collapse in the prey.
Right, the venom drops the bird's blood pressure so fast that it basically faints midair and dies.
Exactly. But let's look at that mechanism through the lens of pharmacology. A chemical substance that has such a powerful, immediate, and targeted effect on the cardiovascular system is incredibly valuable to medical science.
Wait, how?
If scientists can analyze that venom, they can isolate the specific proteins and peptides that cause that rapid drop in blood pressure.
Wait, hold on, you're losing me here. The venom's entire evolutionary job is to crash a cardiovascular system and dissolve tissue. How on earth do scientists look at a biological weapon designed to cause a fatal heart collapse and think, yes, let's give this to humans for their hearts?
I know, it sounds totally counterintuitive, but it all comes down to dosage and reverse engineering. When scientists studied the venom of the Brazilian pit viper family, the broader family the golden lancehead belongs to, they identified a specific peptide.
Okay, a peptide. What does it do?
In the wild, this peptide aggressively blocks an enzyme in the prey's body, causing blood vessels to dilate massively all at once, which crashes the blood pressure and causes death.
Okay, so the venom essentially forces the blood vessels to throw their doors wide open and the pressure just drops to zero.
Exactly. But once scientists understood how the venom achieved this, they were able to synthesize a safer, artificial version of that peptide in a laboratory. They created a medication that doesn't cause a fatal crash, but instead just gently relaxes the blood vessels.
So what does this all mean for us? Are we talking about ACE inhibitors?
Yes, exactly. ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme. The venom blocks it to kill. We use synthetic versions inspired by that venom to block it just enough to save lives.
That is just mind-blowing.
Substances originally discovered through studying the venom of these feared Brazilian predators directly led to the development of ACE inhibitors. These are the exact blood pressure medications that millions of people around the world take every single day to manage hypertension and prevent heart failure.
I am just completely blown away by the irony of this. We started this journey looking at Queimada Grande as a natural prison, a horror movie set, a place of certain death.
Yeah, the Forbidden Island.
But in reality, it operates as a heavily guarded natural pharmacy. The very venom designed by thousands of years of ruthless evolutionary pressure to destroy a cardiovascular system is literally the blueprint for a pill being used to heal human hearts. We came on an expedition expecting to find a monster in the jungle, and we ended up finding a doctor.
It really highlights the profound complexity of nature, and honestly, it underscores exactly why the total isolation of this island is its only salvation.
Because if we'd gotten there sooner?
Right. Think about what would have happened if developers had been allowed to build a luxury resort there 50 years ago. They would have exterminated the snakes to make the island safe for tourists. We would have lost an utterly unique biological treasure before we even had the tools to understand the medical miracles hidden inside their venom.
The sheer terrifying danger of the island is the only thing that kept it pristine.
Exactly.
It protected itself with lethal force until human science was smart enough to actually learn from it, instead of just destroying it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of global conservation, it proves that protecting the environment isn't just about saving animals we find aesthetically pleasing or, cute.
Right, it's not just about pandas.
True conservation is about preserving complex, ancient ecosystems, even the ones that terrify our primal instincts, because the biological data they hold is entirely irreplaceable. When a species goes extinct, millions of years of evolutionary problem solving disappear with them.
Well, brave listener, we have safely concluded our expedition. You can take a breath. We survived our audio journey to a truly fascinating, deeply mysterious territory.
barely survived, but we made it.
We've seen how a rare species was forged in a natural pressure cooker of rising ocean tides and mass starvation. We've explored how they developed a chemical weapon so precise it literally drops birds from the sky, and we've uncovered how human ingenuity turned that weapon into a life-saving daily medication. It is a profound testament to how extraordinary and how utterly ruthless nature can be.
And there's a certain peace in knowing that right now, as we wrap up this discussion, those thousands of golden lanceheads are just being left alone in the Atlantic. They are silently dominating their tiny, rocky kingdom, perfectly adapted to a world built just for them. It proves that some places on this earth are simply meant to remain wild and untouched by humanity.
I couldn't agree more. But before we leave you today, I want to give you one final thought to mull over as you step back into your normal routine. We just learned that an isolated, hostile rock in the ocean forced an animal to evolve a chemical so complex it held the key to treating global heart disease.
It really makes you think.
So it makes you wonder what other unimaginable medical miracles, like cures for diseases we haven't even cracked yet, are currently hidden in the venom of a deep-sea predator, or the leaves of a toxic jungle plant, in the most forbidden, unexplored corners of our planet. And what happens to our own future if we bulldoze and destroy those extreme environments before we are brave enough to explore them?
That's the real question.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. If you enjoyed this expedition, share it with a friend who loves mysteries, the science of the forbidden, and unbelievable true stories. We will see you on the next deep dive.